My name is Sable Quinn, 24 years old. Where I grew up, lawns were measured in compliments and love was lacquered in gloss. In our edge of Dallas, everybody knew where money lived and how it liked to be seen. My father, Jeffrey, built mansions with columns tall enough to hold up a lie. My mother, Pamela, lent her PR smile to brands that sold shine as salvation. At dinner, I learned a doctrine that sounded like scripture. Perception is everything. When I asked why our perfectly fine Lexus needed replacing, Dad would pat the table and say, "People respect what they see." Mom would nod like a metronome, click, click, keeping tempo with his certainty. What they said about education felt just as holy. My report cards were trophies on the mantle. When I took first in a regional coding contest freshman year, Dad called me our prodigy, and Mom kissed my forehead like an anointing. "We're saving for your college," she repeated through high school, an oath easy as breath. "Just get into a top school. We'll handle the rest." So I handled my part. While friends went to lake parties, I closed tabs only when the library lights blinked, survived on vending machine almonds, took community college classes to make my application a latticework of grit. Ms. Ramsey, computer science, sharp bob, eyes that missed nothing, kept a mug on her desk that said, "Trust the algorithm." "You've got something rare, Sable," she told me junior year. "UT Austin will be lucky to have you." I logged her sentence in the file drawer in my chest, where I kept true things. Senior spring felt like a slot machine finally hitting. Texas A&M, yes. UT Austin, yes. Georgia Tech, yes. I ran through the house with envelopes like flags, breathless and bright. Dad texted from a charity mixer. "Capitol Grill, Friday. We celebrate." Mom added a string of champagne emojis, like confetti wasn't free enough. I ironed my black dress and packed a folder with program sheets and housing options, color-coded with sticky tabs. At the restaurant, the lighting was designed to flatter people who wanted to be flattered. The hostess seated us in a corner booth under a candle that made everything look like a promise kept. Dad ordered a $200 bottle with a flourish. "To our star," he said, glass high. "To work that pays off," Mom added, voice velvet. "This is my short list," I said, opening the folder. UT Austin's CS program is top tier, and it's close. A&M offered some merit. Georgia Tech is a reach financially, but a glance passed between them, fast, sharp, like a shadow bird crossing a window. Dad set his glass down carefully. "About that," he said, and I felt the table tilt. "We need to talk about the financial side." I nodded, eager. "I know costs are heavy. A&M's package helps. I'll chase scholarships, work study. Maybe we combine with what you've saved and—" Mom set her water down, aligning it with the napkin's corner. "Sable," she said pleasantly, the tone she used to correct a waiter without getting her hands dirty. "Your father and I have decided we're not paying for your college." For a second, I heard the sentence, but not its meaning, as if it were in a language I used to know. Then the meaning arrived, brutal and whole. "What?" It came out as a breath that forgot how to be a word. Dad leaned in, eyes steady, face the same one he wore when negotiating a bid. "We've worked our tails off for 25 years. It's time we treated ourselves." "Treat," I swallowed. "What about the college fund?" "Plans change," Mom said, smile smooth as patent leather. "We ordered the Mercedes, the SUV with the custom package. It's being delivered next week." Around us, cutlery chimed, ice ticked against crystal. My pulse tried to outrun them all. "You're choosing a car over my college?" "It's not just a car," Dad said, jaw tightening, as if I'd insulted a member of the family. "It's an investment in our image. You don't understand how this town works." But I did. I understood perfectly. And I understood, too, that they expected me to fold the truth into a napkin and set it quietly by my plate. "You promised," I said, and the candle flickered like it felt the tremor in my voice. "You said if I got in, you'd handle the rest." "Promises aren't contracts," Mom said lightly. "There are loans, scholarships, kids figure it out." "You need to learn to stand on your own," Dad added. "We're done carrying you." "Carrying me?" I almost laughed because the room was spinning, and humor sometimes holds hair back. "You pushed me to apply to these schools. You posted my trophies. You wanted a tech star for cocktail talk." Mom waved the server over as if my anger were a fly to shoo. "Don't make a scene. It's not a good look." There it was, the truth inside the truth. Not just no. Don't you dare tell anyone either. "So what am I supposed to do?" I asked. Because once you start inventorying wreckage, You need a list. Tell UT I'm not coming because my tuition has rims? Dad carved his steak. Pick a cheaper school. Get a job. Take out loans. Life's not a free ride. When the bill came, the total could have bought my freshman year textbooks twice. Dad signed with a flourish. Mom touched my wrist, nails perfect. Keep this between us, she said softly. People talk. People respect what they see, I said, and stood before I found out whether my legs would. At home, the house had that magazine spread stillness. All surfaces, no fingerprints. I closed my bedroom door and fell face first on the bed, phone buzzing with Brooke's text. Which one did you choose? And then 3 more from classmates, then one from Ms. Ramsey with a row of confetti I couldn't answer. The tears came quiet at first, then hard, until my throat burned and my eyes swelled, and something inside me that used to be a net tore. Around midnight, the storm moved off and left a strange, clear sky. In it hung a sentence I hadn't invited and couldn't shake. Deal with it. Not as their command now, but as mine. If they wanted me to build without their scaffolding, I would, brick by brick, even if my hands bled. I opened my laptop, the screen lighting my face like a dare, and started with financial aid pages. UT Austin. Parent income exceeds need threshold. Georgia Tech, same. A&M. Small merit, not enough. The system saw a beautiful ledger and none of its lies. Downstairs, a garage door hummed, the Lexus returning from somewhere bright. Upstairs, I checked state schools and found UTA's partial offer. Thin, but real. I could work. I could borrow, if I could find a cosigner. I could be tired for 4 years and a grown woman for the rest of my life. My phone glowed again. Brooke, proud of you already. Ms. Ramsey, whatever happens, you're still the one with the code. I typed and erased 3 responses, then sent none. Sleep came like a truce, not a victory. In it, I dreamed of a car delivery, ribbon big as a lie, neighbors gathered with phones out, and my parents gleaming beside chrome. When I stepped closer in the dream, the paper on the windshield wasn't a spec sheet. It was an invoice with my name where the tuition should be, and the total due was circled in red. When morning found me, my eyes were swollen, my mouth tasted like metal, and resolve had the shaky legs of a colt. I dressed for school and for a fight I hadn't asked for. At the kitchen island, Mom scrolled photos of leather interiors. Dad checked his email, smile he saves for people who will clap later. College is tough, he said, not looking up. You'll manage. I will, I said, and meant it in a way he didn't. On my way out, he called after me, almost as an afterthought. Oh, and no need to mention the car. I won't, I said, and then, because truth has teeth when it's cornered, not tonight. He didn't hear the future in it, but I did. Somewhere down the line, in a room with chandeliers and friends who loved a good story, he would say my name like a credit, and I would hand him the bill. The algorithm of aid is simple, until you live inside its exceptions. I started with UT Austin because it still glowed in my head like a city at night. The woman in financial aid was kind in the way you are when your hands are tied. Ms. Quinn, your parents' income exceeds our need threshold, she said, walking me through a matrix that didn't care that the savings had 4 wheels and an emblem. Because you're a dependent, we have to count it. I thanked her because I was raised to, then called Georgia Tech and heard a different voice say the same sentence in a different accent. Texas A&M softened the blow with a modest merit award. Nice, not enough. On paper, I belonged to a family who could pay with a pen stroke. In every room that mattered, the pen was signing for something else. At lunch, Brooke found me on the quad, the windy side where the dust from construction whipped like the world was being rebuilt without asking us. She read my face before I could make it polite. They're really not paying? She asked, low. When I nodded, she kicked a pebble like it had volunteered to be the villain. Then we find another route. The other route was University of Texas at Arlington, UTA, with a partial scholarship that covered half of in-state tuition and the dignity of a yes. I wrote my acceptance with hands that still shook, then started piecing together the rest. A library job for 10 hours a week, a diner shift on weekends and 2 nights, work study if they'd have me, and the thin hope that I could hold all of it at once without dropping what mattered. When I moved into UTA's oldest dorm in August, the paint peeled in friendly curls, and the mattress creaked like it remembered other people's weight. Brooke, assigned to another hall, helped me loft the bed, laughing when the Allen wrench skittered under the dresser. "It's rough," she said, eyeing the cinder block walls, "but we'll make it ours." She taped a paper star over the fire alarm, then marched me to a bulletin board to circle campus jobs I hadn't already applied for. Reality clicked into a schedule that looked like a dare. Mornings, library, where the quiet smelled like old glue and ambition. Afternoons, classes with professors who learned my name and the version of my face you make when you're trying not to fall asleep. Nights, the diner, where the ice machine rattled like weather and my sneakers took on a permanent sheen of coffee. I wrote code past midnight and learned which vending machine took dollar bills that wanted to live. When my body begged for a day off, I stacked it higher with just one more shift, then woke to find a calculus exam waiting for a brain I'd rented out to everything else. 4 hours of sleep on a good night, noodles that tasted like MSG and Resolve, and a voicemail from Mom once a week, "How's school?" Followed by an enthusiastic report about the new wax job on the Mercedes. Dad texted occasionally, "Proud of you, kiddo," with the breezy punctuation of a man who has turned feeling into a PR statement. I told no one about crying in the library bathroom when the fluorescent lights flickered and the floor seemed to tip. I told no one that sometimes, while waiting tables, my hands would shake when a customer said, "Make it quick," because the sentence reached back to a candlelit booth where my future had been totaled like a car. Midterms arrived with all the subtlety of a storm. I pulled an all-nighter for a coding project that finally sang, then dozed during Calc 2 and woke with 15 minutes to solve a proof that needed 60. At the diner that night, I dropped a tray of sodas, and the manager, a woman who'd been kind until she couldn't afford to be, handed me a warning with an apology in her eyes. I walked back to the dorm and found a notice slid under the door. Past due, $2,000. If I didn't pay, I wouldn't register for spring. The paper trembled in my hands. Then the trembling moved through me, a fault line I couldn't clamp shut. I sat on the linoleum and let the sobs tear out of me, ugly and animal, the kind you only make when nobody is grading you on composure. Brooke found me like that, knees up, paper crushed, mascara like war paint. She didn't do the thing where people tell you it's fine. She read the notice, then sat beside me until my breath remembered how to come and go. "Is there anyone else?" she asked finally. "Anyone who could co-sign? Grandma? Aunt? A neighbor who's basically blood?" The word grandma landed like a pin on a map. Edith had sent me a $1,000 check for graduation with a card that smelled faintly of lavender and drawer liners. For books, not shoes, in her looping hand. My parents had borrowed it for a week or two, and then smiled whenever I asked where it went. I had stopped asking because there are only so many times you can hear a door close. I walked to a bench behind the engineering building and called her, voice small in a way I hated. "Baby," she said once I finished, outrage turning her vowels into something sturdier. "Jeffrey did what?" The question wasn't a question. It was a diagnosis. "You listen to me, Sable. You are not going to be punished for somebody else's vanity. I raised him better, even if he hid it from me." Paper rustled. "I'll co-sign, and I'll send what I can each month, even if it means fewer gardenias. You will not stop because 2 adults wanted to play dress-up with their reputation." The relief was a physical thing. It loosened a rope I hadn't noticed was around my ribs. I cried again, but this time it didn't sound like defeat. "I don't want you to hurt for me," I managed. "I'm not hurting," she said fierce. "I'm investing." With Edith's signature, the private loan cleared just enough of the past due to let me register, and a small monthly stipend let me drop 1 diner night so I could put my hands back on my own work. I emailed Ms. Ramsey to say I hadn't vanished. She sent back an article about women in systems design and a PS, "Please eat something green." Dr. Grant, my algorithms professor, whose lectures unspooled like stories that could be debugged, noticed I stopped blinking so slowly in the front row. "You've got the bones," he told me after class, tapping my problem set. "Keep pushing. The rest is reps." Even my dorm began to feel less like a punishment and more like a place. Brooke and I learned the trick to coaxing heat from the old radiator and the secret vending machine in the basement that sold oranges if you kicked it in the right spot. On Friday nights, when we were too broke to pretend we weren't, we put on music and studied parallel while swapping horror stories. Her dad's layoff and the way people stop calling when your luck does. My parents' new car with custom plates that I wouldn't say out loud. Sometimes I'd catch myself scrolling their social media, waxed paint, leather seats, captions about blessings, and feel the old ache rise. I'd put the phone face down and open a problem set because some hungers are better fed by answers. In November, a notice went up for the regional coding competition. "You should try out," Brooke said, punching my arm lightly. "Ms. Trust the algorithm." I laughed it off. I was too tired. Those teams went to UT Austin and A&M, but Dr. Grant cornered me after lab with a look that cut through all my deflection. "We need you," he said simply. "You write code that breathes." I wrote my name on the list and felt for the first time in months like I was reaching toward something instead of away from a cliff. The universe didn't stop demanding proof I belonged. A week before tryouts, the library cut shifts, the diner added a holiday schedule, and the bursar's office sent a polite reminder that spring bills were constructing themselves as we spoke. But when I looked at the past due box on my spreadsheet, there was a green number beside it where red had been. Edith's transfer had landed like a heartbeat. I texted her a photo of a real salad, full of things that grew on vines and not in fluorescent light. "Proud of you for the arugula," she wrote back. "Prouder of you for the grit." On the last night before finals, I walked past a glass storefront downtown and saw a reflection I almost didn't recognize. Hair pulled back, eyes tired and sharp. A girl who looked like she had built a raft and was learning how to steer. Behind me, a car rolled by slowly, music low, chrome catching the streetlight like a wink. I didn't turn to see the emblem. I didn't need to. Symbols are louder when you stop listening. Back in the dorm, Brooke knocked once and barged in with 2 plastic cups of terrible cocoa. "To stubborn girls with good code," she said, raising hers. We clinked. The radiator hissed. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed. Somewhere in my chest, another door unlatched. I lay down with my laptop open and a 1,000-line file waiting. And before the screen dimmed, I wrote one more line in the private readme of my life. They traded my future for a car. I'm trading their lesson for a map. The cursor blinked. I blinked back. Then I started typing. The coding competition was supposed to be just another resume line. That's what I told myself the night before, hunched over a vending machine orange and half a bag of pretzels. But when I walked into the conference hall, rows of laptops glowing under harsh lights, it felt like stepping into an arena. UT Austin banners fluttered at one end, Texas A&M at the other. UTA's table looked modest, our team's hoodies pilled at the elbows. Still, when Dr. Grant patted my shoulder and whispered, "You belong here," I almost believed him. The first round was brutal. We were handed problems that looked like gibberish until you cracked the right piece. My hands shook as I typed, but then the rhythm kicked in. Loops, conditions, recursion, it all began to breathe. Hours blurred until the announcer called time. We looked up, blinking, like moles surfacing after a storm. When the scoreboard flashed, UTA was shockingly near the top. Brooke screamed loud enough for heads to turn. "See? Told you," she said, smirking as if she'd bet her life on me. By the final round, fatigue hit like bricks, but something inside me refused to quit. I remembered my dad's voice. Pick a cheaper school, get a job, take loans. I remembered my mom's warning. Don't make a scene. And I made one, on the screen. My optimization shaved seconds off a process that other teams had resigned to inefficiency. When the clock ran out, the scoreboard glowed. Second place, UTA. It shouldn't have mattered so much, but it did. We'd beaten teams with shinier resources, kids whose parents hadn't traded their futures for a car. Dr. Grant's grin was wide enough to hurt. "That algorithm of yours," he said, shaking his head like he couldn't contain the pride. "It carried us." Then, almost offhand, "I'd like to recommend you for an internship at CodeSap Technologies this summer." I blinked. "CodeSap in Austin?" "Rising firm," he said, "and they'd be lucky to have you." That night, back in the dorm, Brooke and I celebrated with dollar pizza. She raised her crust like a toast. You're outgrowing this place already, she said. I can feel it. I laughed, but later, alone with my laptop, I filled out the application with shaking fingers. For once, I wasn't applying to escape debt or disaster. I was applying to climb. Weeks later, an email lit up my inbox. Congratulations. We're thrilled to offer you a summer internship at CodeSap Technologies. Paid, housing included. I read it 3 times before it sank in. Then I called Edith, nearly dropping the phone. I got it, Grandma, I said, breathless. I really got it. Her voice cracked with joy. I never doubted you, Sable, not for a second. I should have stopped there, savoring the win, but a stubborn part of me still wanted my parents to know, still wanted them to say, we're proud. So I called. Mom answered, her voice muffled like she was in a crowd. Hello? I just wanted to tell you I got a competitive internship this summer, I said, at CodeSap in Austin. They're paying me. There was a pause, then Dad's voice cut in, flat. That's good. Don't make it sound like we're the villains here. You're doing fine. Mom added, we'll tell people you're staying local for family reasons. That plays better than saying you couldn't afford the big schools. My stomach dropped. Even my win was just another PR move for them. I got the internship because of me, I said, my tone icy. Not because of the story you spin. The silence on the line was thicker than smoke. Finally, Dad muttered, don't get dramatic, before hanging up. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, the dial tone buzzing. They didn't care about the algorithm, the ranking, the company that wanted me. They cared about their image, still driving that Mercedes through Dallas, still posing under chandeliers. I almost regretted calling. But then I remembered the scoreboard, my name in second place where nobody expected it. I remembered Dr. Grant's faith, Edith's fierce pride, Brooke's grin over greasy pizza. And for the first time, I thought, maybe I don't need their applause anymore. But deep down, a voice whispered, one day they'll see. Summer in Austin was supposed to be unbearable, heat pressing down like a hand you couldn't shake off, but I barely noticed. CodeSap was air-conditioned, sleek, and alive with possibility. My badge clicked me through glass doors each morning. My desk overlooked a skyline I'd once only dreamed of. When my algorithm tweak saved the team hours of processing, my supervisor Valerie smiled and said, that's the kind of work that gets remembered. For the first time in years, I felt like I was more than just surviving. But victories have a way of attracting ghosts. Halfway through July, my parents called. Mom's voice was syrupy, the way it got when she wanted something. Darling, your father and I are hosting a charity gala at the Hilton downtown next month. We'd love for you to come. It'll be full of important people. Important people. Translation. Donors and country club friends they wanted to impress. I hesitated, but Edith's words echoed, sometimes facing them is the only way to cut the cord clean. So I said yes. The night of the gala, I walked in wearing the only cocktail dress I owned, borrowed heels clicking too loud on the marble. Chandeliers glowed, waiters floated with trays of champagne, and outside, their Mercedes gleamed under the valet lights like a crown jewel. Mom swooped in, air kissing my cheeks. You look lovely, Sable, she whispered, her smile tight. Dad clapped me on the back. Our coding star, he said, leading me to the long banquet table. I noticed how guests' eyes followed me, curiosity flickering. My parents had clearly been bragging. Dinner began with Dad raising a glass. This is our daughter Sable, he announced, voice polished. She's at UTA, working hard, making us proud. One of his golf buddies leaned over, brows arched. UTA? I thought she was headed to UT Austin. Before I could open my mouth, Mom jumped in, her laugh too high. She chose to stay close to home. Family means everything to her. My fork froze midair. My chest tightened. They were rewriting history, painting themselves as supportive, sacrificing parents. My cheeks burned, but something inside me snapped clean. I set the fork down. The clink cut through the table chatter. Actually, I said, my voice steady but sharp, I'm at UTA because my parents bought a Mercedes-Benz instead of paying for my college. The room went silent. Guests glanced at each other, some pretending to study their plates. Dad's smile vanished, replaced by stone. Sable, don't be ridiculous, he muttered. We encouraged her independence, he told the table, forcing a chuckle. Encouraged? My voice rose despite myself. You promised me college if I got into a top school. I did. And you threw it away for leather seats and chrome rims. Mom's face stiffened. Sable, not here, she hissed. You're humiliating us. No, I said, my pulse pounding in my ears. You humiliated me the moment you told me to deal with it. Guests pushed back chairs, pretending to check their phones. Dad leaned in, jaw clenched. Watch your tone. We gave you 18 good years. That's more than enough. I met his stare head on. Most parents don't trade their child's future for a car. The air thickened with tension. Mom grabbed my wrist, nails digging. Come with me, she ordered, dragging me toward the kitchen. Inside, away from the crowd, her mask cracked. Do you know what you've done? You've destroyed our reputation. I yanked my arm free. No, Mom. You destroyed it when you chose an SUV over your daughter's education. I just told the truth. Dad stormed in, face red. Stop this drama. You're lucky we gave you the life we did. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. Lucky. I'm building my life in spite of you. For a moment, none of us moved. The clatter of dishes from the hotel kitchen filled the silence. Then I turned, walked out through the ballroom with every pair of eyes on me, and headed straight for the door. As the valet brought my rideshare, I glanced back once. The Mercedes sat under the lights, spotless, polished. My parents stood frozen in the doorway, their faces pale masks. I didn't wave, I didn't smile. I just left. The Uber ride away from the Hilton was a blur, city lights streaking past like they were racing me to a future I hadn't quite claimed yet. My hands shook in my lap, not from regret, but from the adrenaline of finally saying what I'd swallowed for years. Back in Arlington, I drafted an email before I lost my nerve. I need space. I'll update you on big milestones, but don't contact me otherwise. No theatrics, just boundaries in black and white. Their replies came fast. Mom's was defensive. You blindsided us. Do you realize how many people were at that gala? Dad's was angrier. We won't be painted as villains. You owe us respect. I archived both without responding. Then I blocked their numbers, unfollowed their accounts, scrubbed the constant drip of their polished life from my feed. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable. It echoed, but it was mine. Edith called the next morning. I heard about the gala, she said gently. Of course she had. Dallas was a small world when you lived in it long enough. I told the truth, I said, voice tight. And the truth always costs something, she replied. But sometimes it buys you more than you lose. At CodaSap, I threw myself into work. My algorithm tweak became the backbone of a new product. Valerie, my supervisor, called me into her office one afternoon, a rare grin on her face. You've impressed the CTO. Keep this up and you'll have a job offer waiting when you graduate. I walked back to my desk dazed, then texted Brooke. They want me. For real. She replied instantly. Of course they do, dummy. You're brilliant. With each small win, the wound from the gala scabbed over. But healing is never linear. Some nights I'd scroll through old photos. Me at 12 with my coding trophy. Mom's arm tight around my shoulder. Dad grinning like I was his investment. I'd remember their promises, their pride when it suited them, and the knife twist of knowing it had always been conditional. When the semester ended, I stayed in Austin for the internship, living in company-provided housing. Edith sent care packages, lavender sachets, oatmeal cookies, sticky notes with reminders like, drink water, genius. Her faith filled the spaces my parents had vacated. By fall, CodaSap offered me a part-time remote role during junior year. It paid more than the diner ever had, enough to clear some of my loans and finally let me breathe. I dropped the library job, kept only what I needed. Sleep stretched from 4 hours to 6. My grades climbed with the rest. Dr. Grant pulled me aside after class one day. Your paper on optimization? It's journal-worthy. Submit it. The girl who once cried in a library bathroom clutched the recommendation letter he handed me like it was oxygen. Meanwhile, my parents' silence stretched. I heard through Edith that their debts were catching up, that even the Mercedes couldn't mask late payments forever. But I didn't call. I couldn't. Not yet. Because every time I thought of them, I still heard Mom's hiss in that hotel kitchen. You've destroyed our reputation. And every time my answer was the same. No, Mom. You destroyed mine first. Junior year at UTA felt like stepping onto solid ground after years of treading water. My remote role at CodaSap paid enough to cover rent, loans, and even a few small luxuries. Coffee that didn't come from instant packets, a secondhand bike to get around campus. But it wasn't just money, it was purpose. When my algorithm project was published in a regional tech journal, Dr. Grant clapped me on the shoulder. This is the kind of work people remember, Sable. You're not just surviving, you're carving a path. I biked home with the letter of acceptance to the journal tucked in my backpack like a trophy, grinning into the evening wind. Brooke insisted we celebrate with greasy pizza. "You're a rock star," she declared, raising a soda can like champagne. For the first time, I half believed her. That fall, Codasap offered me a full-time junior developer position post-graduation. The salary made my jaw drop, and the signing bonus alone could wipe out nearly half my student loans. I signed the contract that night, alone in my dorm, tears streaking down my cheeks. Not sad tears, not even joyful ones, just release. The girl my parents dismissed at the Capitol Grill, the one they told to deal with it, had become someone they wouldn't even recognize. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about kids like me, students with dreams blocked not by ability, but by parents who chose pride over promises. During orientation at CodeSap's Austin headquarters, I noticed a flyer for the Opportunity Fund, a scholarship program for disadvantaged students. My pulse quickened. The idea hit me like lightning. What if I could create something for kids like me, not the traditionally needy, but those left stranded because their families looked wealthy on paper, while in reality, they chose luxury over education? That night, I drafted a proposal for a scholarship under the Opportunity Fund. I called it Drive Forward. Its focus, students whose parents had the means, but chose to prioritize cars, vacations, or status over tuition. The essay prompt wrote itself. Tell us how you overcame family obstacles to pursue your education, and how you'll help others do the same. When I presented it to Colin, the fund's director, he leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised. "This is personal for you, isn't it?" My throat tightened. "Very." He smiled slowly. "Then let's make it happen." Within 6 months, the scholarship launched. 3 students were funded in its first year. I insisted on adding a mentorship program, pairing recipients with CodeSap employees. Valerie volunteered first. "You're changing lives, Sable," she said, squeezing my shoulder. What I didn't tell her was that I was changing my own. Every essay I read felt like déjà vu. A girl whose parents bought a yacht instead of tuition. A boy whose father gambled away his college fund. Each story cut deep, but it also reminded me I wasn't alone. Late one night, I sat in my tiny Austin apartment, walls plastered with sketches, code printouts, and scholarship drafts, and realized something. I hadn't just escaped my parents' shadow. I'd built something bigger, brighter, untouchable. By 24, I wasn't just surviving. I was leading my own team at CodeSap. The algorithm I'd once tinkered with in a dorm room now powered a product praised in tech circles. My name appeared in a trade magazine under Rising Stars. I read it twice, almost laughing. The girl crying over ramen and overdue bills had become a headline. That's when the email came. Subject line, "We'd like to talk." It was from my parents. They were coming to Austin for a construction industry conference and wanted to meet. My stomach knotted. Edith's voice played in my head. "You're in control now. If you meet them, make it on your terms." So I chose the cafe across from CodeSap headquarters. My turf, not theirs. When they walked in, I barely recognized them. Dad's hair grayer, Mom thinner, both looking older than they should at 50. "Sable," Mom breathed, eyes wet, reaching as if to hug me. I offered a handshake instead. "Good to see you," I said evenly. We sat. They made small talk about the weather, their flight, avoiding the crackling air between us. Finally, Mom cleared her throat. "We heard about your promotion. CodeSap must be impressive." Dad nodded stiffly. "Big achievement for someone your age." I leaned back steady. It took a lot of work I did alone. They flinched. For once, silence served me, not them. "Would you like to see my office?" I asked, and they agreed too quickly, maybe hoping for a chance to bask in reflected pride. At headquarters, colleagues waved. Valerie stopped us in the hall. "Sable's our star," she said warmly. "Her algorithms are a game changer." I saw their shoulders square, pride puffing them like peacocks. They still wanted credit for what they'd tried to crush. In my office, small but mine, awards lined the shelf, team photos on the wall. They took it all in, eyes darting between proof of my success and the daughter who stood before them. Then Colin, the Opportunity Fund director, poked his head in. "The Drive Forward scholarship packets are ready for review," he said, smiling. Dad's brow furrowed. "Scholarship?" I met their eyes. "Yes, I started Drive Forward. It helps students whose parents could have paid for college but didn't, because they chose things like cars instead." The silence was volcanic. Mom's face drained of color. "You made a scholarship because of us?" she whispered. I didn't flinch. Because of what you did. Because I know what it feels like to have your future traded for a luxury SUV. Dad sank into a chair, staring at the floor. We didn't think it would hit you this hard, he muttered. You didn't think about me at all, I countered. My voice was steady, but sharp enough to cut glass. You thought about appearances, about what people saw when you pulled up to the club, not about the years I scraped and clawed just to stay in school. Mom's eyes shimmered with tears, but her voice was ice. People know about us? Not by name, I said, but they know my story, that my parents told me to deal with it, that a car mattered more than my education. Dad's jaw tightened. So you've been telling everyone we failed you? I locked eyes with him. I've been telling the truth. The silence after that felt like a chasm none of us could cross. When they left, Mom's face was blotched with tears. Dad's shoulders hunched. I didn't follow. I closed my office door, leaned against it, and breathed. For the first time, I didn't feel like the child begging for their approval. I felt like the adult who no longer needed it. Weeks passed after that confrontation, and the silence that followed was heavier than before. I buried myself in work, in the Drive Forward scholarship, in the life I'd built brick by brick without them. But the truth lingered. I had cracked their facade, and I knew it. One Sunday evening, my phone lit up with a number I hadn't saved, but I knew it by heart. Dad's voice was tired, stripped of its usual armor. Sable, can we talk? I nearly hung up, but something in his tone, raw, unpolished, stopped me. He didn't start with excuses this time. He started with the words I never thought I'd hear. We were selfish. We told ourselves it was about teaching you independence, but the truth? We wanted that car more than we wanted to keep our promise. We hurt you, and I'm sorry. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The apology I had dreamed of for years, the one I'd stopped expecting, was finally spoken. Thank you, I whispered, my voice cracking despite myself. We met at a quiet cafe near my apartment. Mom was there too, her hands trembling as she passed me a sealed letter. I wrote it down, she said, so I wouldn't mess it up. I unfolded it later, alone. Her handwriting wavered across the page. Apologies for not just the car, but for dismissing my pain, for protecting their image instead of their daughter, for breaking a trust she admitted might never heal. When I looked up, she was watching me with wet eyes. We told ourselves we were helping you grow, but we were just running from our own mess. I asked them why now. Mom's voice was small. Because when we saw your office, when we heard about the scholarship, you weren't just a success story, we realized we were the villains in it. There was no dramatic hug, no sudden erasure of years of hurt, just a shaky truce, built on acknowledgement instead of denial. We agreed on small steps, weekly phone calls, occasional coffee when they came to Austin, no sweeping gestures, no pretending the past hadn't happened. We don't expect you to forget, Mom said softly as we stood to leave. We just want to try. Months later, they offered to fund the Drive Forward scholarship. I shook my head. It's mine. It stands for something you don't get to claim. But if you want to make amends, start your own. Do something real. To my surprise, they did, quietly. A modest fund at UTA for community college transfers. No press releases, no photo ops, just a first step. Meanwhile, my life kept expanding. CodasApp promoted me again after my team's algorithm boosted platform efficiency by 30%. The Drive Forward scholarship grew, now supporting 5 students a year. Edith visited for Thanksgiving, marveling at the walls of my apartment lined with code and sketches. You turned betrayal into purpose, she said, squeezing my hand. On my 25th birthday, we gathered. Randy, Brooke, my team, Edith, and, for the first time in years, my parents. Edith raised her glass. To Sable, who turned pain into a legacy. My father's eyes shone as he added, voice breaking, we failed you, but watching you rise, watching you help others, it's taught us more than we ever taught you. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something, a bridge, fragile and real. Later that night, Randy asked, how do you feel? I stared at the skyline through my window. It's messy. Part of me is still that 18-year-old, crushed at the Capitol grill. But another part knows this life I built is stronger because of it. A week later, a letter arrived from a Drive Forward recipient. My parents bought a boat instead of paying for my tuition. I thought no one would ever understand, but knowing someone else lived it and made it gives me hope. I folded the letter carefully, tears in my eyes. That was my healing, not erasing the past, but transforming it. My parents' choice had cost me years, but it also forged something they could never take back, a future I owned,